everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Casey, and today we're going to go over my March wrap-up and April TBR. Round of applause. I got back into my reading this month. Even though I got sick again, I did spend a week in bed where I wasn't too sick to read, so I was actually able to catch up on my reading. So that was exciting. I read 6 books in March. Let's talk about them. The first book I read in March was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. This is the first book in the Jurassic Park duology. The second book that I read while sick in bed was Club Dead by Charlaine Harris, and this is the third book in the Southern Vampire Mysteries series. The third book that I read in March was Circe by Madeline Miller. The fourth book I read in March was The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly, and this is the first book in the Book of Lost Things duology. The fifth book that I read in March was The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton. The sixth and final book that I read in March was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is a prequel for the Hunger Games series. How many of you were able to guess that the last book I read in March was Sunrise on the Reaping? I bet a good majority. Now let's move forward and break these down. Spoiler warnings for any and all of these books, especially Sunrise on the Reaping since it's a new release. I know a lot of people are trying to go into that book blind, not knowing much, and all of my videos are chaptered for you, so if there's a book you don't want to get spoiled for you, do feel free to skip ahead. I try to avoid too many spoilers in my reviews, but sometimes, there are things I just have to talk about, so use your best judgment, skip around as needed. Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton is a classic sci-fi thriller adventure story. I read Jurassic Park as one of the prompts for my library card game, and that prompt was a series with an island setting. Most of us are probably familiar with Jurassic Park because of the movie, and I gotta say the book did not live up to the movie. I watched that movie back when I was 5 years old for the first time and had nightmares about dinosaurs my entire life, including now. However, the book didn't really have the same kind of scary dinosaurs that the movie had, especially the T-Rex. It was kind of pathetic at times. But let me take a step back for those of you who might not know the story. Jurassic Park is about a group of scientists and experts that are invited to view a theme park that they've consulted on that has genetically recreated dinosaurs. And while touring the island, unfortunately, there is a plot, a scheme, and a twist that results in the power being turned off on the island and the dinosaurs escaping and mayhem ensuing. What I really appreciated about this book was the more of the scientific POV that you don't get to see in the movie. You don't see too much of the genetics that go into it. You don't get to see the scientists that work on it. You don't get to see the various stages in the lab, and you do get to see all of that in the book, which I really did appreciate. What I did not appreciate in this book was Lex. I would feed that child to a dinosaur. I have never seen a character with less skills to preserve their own life. This kid could not help herself, screaming, "It's my turn, why don't I get to do things?" When a dinosaur is about to eat her, she is more concerned about it's her turn. I have never seen a more annoying child put to page. Something else that really bothered me in this book is that with all of the things and scenarios that they planned for, that they had all these genius people working on this park, none of them ever factored in that a hurricane could hit Costa Rica, because hurricanes have hit Costa Rica, and I don't know how they didn't factor this in as something that could potentially happen to them. And those are some mild complaints, but really, I did really enjoy this book. I devoured it. I wanted it to be longer. I gave it 4.25 out of 5 stars, and I almost immediately dived into The Lost World, but I had to make myself stop and not enjoy these too fast, because it's a really fun time. You really go on the adventure with these characters. You really are questioning things the way they are questioning things. Like, why would you make carnivores, though? This is crazy. I mean, Stegosauruses, Brontosauruses, sure, but who thought to breed this big 5-inch long-toothed reptile? This is crazy. But I'm a little mad at this book also because it told me that dinosaurs like T-Rex can swim, and The Land Before Time told me that T-Rexes definitely couldn't swim with those scrawny arms, and now everything I know about dinosaurs is wrong. But I digress. If you have not read Jurassic Park yet, you should definitely give this a try. It was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed it. Tech nerds rejoice. It had enough adventure to keep me along for the ride, enough mystery to keep me asking questions. Even though I've seen the movie, I was still curious about the answers that the book was going to give me. I loved seeing the chubby stegosaurus walking around munching. That made me so happy. And even though I felt a little bit science dumb because I don't understand genetics, I had a great time. Club Dead by Charlaine Harris is the third book in the Southern Vampire Mystery series, also known as the Sookie Stackhouse novels or the True Blood books. Now, this series is a paranormal mystery, romance, and urban fantasy series. In this third installment, Bill goes missing and Sookie is out to find him. She has to turn to Eric as the sheriff of Area 5, who in turn enlists the help of a werewolf named Alcide Herveau. This leads Sookie to Jackson, Mississippi, a home of the Wares, where she continues her investigation looking for Vampire Bill. Now, Bill has been pretty neglectful to Sookie lately in their relationship, and she feels their relationship maybe has ended, and in her search for him, even though she still feels loyal to him, she starts to catch feelings for Alcide, who is something of a big warm teddy bear, and going through heartbreak of his own. I read Club Dead as one of the prompts from my library card game, and that would be a series that was published between 1990 and 2010. Club Dead was published in 2003. And did I like this book? A trashy yes to that. I rated this book 4.5 stars. This is better than the previous book, but not quite reaching the epicness that was the first book. These books are so much trashy fun. I love how unseriously these books take themselves. I love Bubba in these books. He is hilarious just as a thought of a character walking around. And I would absolutely recommend these books to anyone who just wants a fun read, a fun, spicy, paranormal mystery, romance popcorn read. These are those. If you are looking for a literary masterpiece, you do not want to read this. It's just a trashy good time with fun characters and southern twang and sweet tea, and I love it. Circe by Madeline Miller is a mythological retelling and a book talk darling. I read Circe as one of the prompts from my library card TBR game, and that prompt was historical fiction with a black cover. Circe had been on my TBR for over a year, almost 2 years, and I was really excited to be getting to this book finally. In this book, we follow the titular character Circe when she is banished to an island for all of eternity after she has used magic against the gods and attacking one of her own, turning them into a monster. Part of this punishment is that she is doomed to be alone and watching the mortals that she loves so much die as they pass her by on their boats, where she's just supposed to be alone, but she embraces this time on the island to hone her magical skills, to learn spells, to work herbs and potions, and she comes to love her island and creates her own home here. Now I'm about to get controversial because I know a lot of people absolutely love this book, but I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. Part of me thinks it just wasn't the right time for this book. After reading fun books like Jurassic Park and Club Dead, this book was very quiet plot-wise, very somber. It's very literary fiction almost, where you just spend a lot of time with Circe, really just getting to know her, and there really isn't much plot to tie the book together. You're just spending time with her. And because of that kind of story, this book felt way longer than the 400 pages that it was. It took me forever to get through this book. There were a few things in this book that I really enjoyed, like the birth of the Minotaur and Scylla and the monster story behind Scylla, and seeing her in her monster form and how rage-filled she was and how that whole story goes. I thought those were really interesting, but there wasn't much more than that to the story. It's just spending time with Circe on the island. Sometimes there are girls there that have been sent to this island as well for being misbehaving daughters, but nothing happens to them that's interesting. She creates lions and wolves and all these things and has male visitors and takes lovers, but it wasn't interesting. It was just reading pages and pages and pages of days gone by, which I understand was her punishment, but did it have to be mine? And this writing in this book is very flowery and lyrical, and while that does fit the character and the story, the mood that is trying to be portrayed, it all fits, but somehow still didn't work for me, and I think that's a me problem. I felt like this writing really wanted to be so clever and so profound, but there never was a full culmination to a point. It just never became anything, like the flower didn't bloom. However, if you are looking for a character-driven story, if you do enjoy mythology and historical fiction, then you might enjoy this book more than I did. I just don't think this book was for me in particular, and that's okay. The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly is a young adult fantasy story, and it is the first book in the Book of Lost Things duology. I read the Book of Lost Things for the Buzzwordathon and Coverathon challenge, the buzzword being a thing and the cover prompt being a book on the cover. In the Book of Lost Things, we follow David, a young boy in World War II England, who has recently lost his mother, his father has remarried, his stepmother has had a baby, they've moved house, and his entire life has been turned upside down, and he really can't find his place within this new family dynamic. Something that does give David solace is his books, and he's a very bookish boy, and in his new room, he inherits a collection of old books that used to belong to his stepmother's uncle, but he went missing back in the day with his adopted sister, Anna. One night, David is out in the back garden, and there's like a sunken-in feature in his backyard that kind of is like a slope down into the earth kind of garden, and a plane crashes on top of him. It shot out of the sky. There was a lot of bombings going on in England at this time, and the plane crashes on top of him, but instead of being crushed by the plane, he escapes into a crack in the wall and is transported into a new and magical world. When he arrives into the new world, David cannot get back, and he meets the woodsman from Little Red Riding Hood, and the woodsman tells him that the only way he may be able to return to his own land is to quest forth and to meet the king of the land, who has a book of lost things, a magical book that may be able to return him to his home world. David begins his journey to meet the king, and we meet all kinds of fairy tale characters along the way. There are creepy wolves, like wolf men also. This book is advertised as YA, but it is pretty dark around the edges. And I gotta say, I just loved this book. I was so in the mood for this after Circe. I was so in the mood for the magical and the adventure, and even the creepy darkness. Even the crooked man in this book gives me child catcher vibes from Chitty Chitty Bang Bang. I got Alice in Wonderland vibes and Wizard of Oz vibes and the Page Master vibes. I was vibing. And I gave this book 4.75 stars. The only two reasons that I'll tell you, the only two reasons it's not a 5-star book is because there was a trope in here that I don't love, and also that the ending felt a little bit rushed, and it was soured a little bit by a character reappearing that we thought was dead. I don't like that trope either. So the ending didn't feel as rewarding as the journey itself was, but I still really enjoyed this book. If you like dark fairy tales, adventures, once upon a time, coming of age stories, then I think you might enjoy this book too. The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton is a gothic mystery, and I read this as a prompt for my library card game, being a mystery with a number in the title. I also used this book as my free pick for the TBR Trail of the Quest game that I play with Kim from Expedition Through Pages and Amy from A-Star Reads. Now, the basic gist of the 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle is that we are attending a party at a gothic mansion called Blackheath. We have a main character that we follow who will wake up in the body of a different guest at the party for 8 days in a row, and he has 8 days to solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle, and that's the only way he will be able to escape this mansion, to leave the property, to leave what is a time loop. This book has the Groundhog's Day trope. He relives the same day 8 days in a row until he can solve the murder of Evelyn Hardcastle. If he does not solve her murder, then the time loop will begin again. Now, I am a Gothic mansion girly to my core. I love me a creepy estate with a name. Give me Manderley, give me Foxworth Hall, give me Blackheath. This book was always going to be something I was going to enjoy. And I did really enjoy this book up until the ending. I had such a good time sleuthing it out. I was able to guess who the killer was, and I would have escaped Blackheath. I'm not bragging, but I would have made it out of this time loop. I had the killer picked within the first 100 pages, but do not be discouraged by that announcement because nothing is as it seems in this book. And I ended up rating this book 4.25 stars. There are a few reasons why it couldn't be a 5-star book. One is that it was very repetitive and it felt dragged out because we're going through the time loop over and over again, which is to be expected, but also not enjoyable. And the book just needed to end, right? It had one too many twists, one too many turns, one too many gotchas. I think had it had ended 70 pages earlier, it would have been a better book, but the ending that we got just felt a little bit unsatisfying. But still, I would recommend this book if you enjoy a Gothic story, a whodunit, if you like sleuthing it out, if you enjoy the Groundhog Day trope, then I think you would like this book too. The final book I read in March was Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. This is a prequel to the Hunger Games series. Most of us are probably familiar with the Hunger Games, but if you're not, it's a young adult dystopian series. I read Sunrise on the Reaping as a prompt for the TBR Trail Quest game, as a highly rated book, and also as a prompt for my library card game, being a sci-fi with an ugly cover. It's not really an ugly cover, I just really needed this book to fit into my TBR somewhere, and I feel like this cover is not as pretty as some of the other covers I had picked. In this book, we are witnessing the 50th annual Hunger Games. This is the second quarter quell, and this is Haymitch's story. This is when Haymitch competes in the Hunger Games. Haymitch was a character from the original series who served as Katniss and Peeta's mentor. And while I did enjoy this book, I did have issues with it as well, and do not come for me. I rated it 4 out of 5 stars. I didn't personally think this was the greatest Hunger Games book. The first two, The Hunger Games and Catching Fire, are just infinitely unreachable by my standards. Those two books were so good. I also really enjoyed The Ballads of Songbirds and Snakes, and I know that I'm in a minority with that one, but I thought that book was great. And this one I didn't think was as good personally. I know a lot of people don't feel that way, but personally that's how I feel. What I really enjoyed about this book was seeing Haymitch's character in his 16-year-old youth, where he was just your average kid just trying to make it with his family. He wasn't as traumatized as some of the other characters that we see. He was really just trying to do his best and live his best life in District 12 with his family and his girlfriend, and along come the Hunger Games and the Reaping that turns everything upside down and rips all of that away from him. And I do think this book did an excellent job of giving perspective and giving us information as to why Haymitch is the way he is in the main trilogy. And I personally do enjoy the time we spend in the arena, which is weird to say considering the child murder, but I like reading the actual Hunger Games themselves and seeing the arenas and the obstacles that they have to overcome, seeing the sponsors send gifts, seeing the bonds that are created, seeing the challenges they have to overcome. I enjoy the time that I spend reading the actual Hunger Games themselves. What I did not like about this book and why I rated it 4 stars is the constant cameos/fan service. It was too much. There were entirely too many previous characters dropped into this book, and I can understand that they wanted to set up the rebellion had been building for a long time, and you can absolutely do that with a few of these characters. Plutarch obviously is essential to that. Haymitch, obviously the main character, he needed to be there. But having Mags and Yarros be there, having Beatty be there, it just didn't really feel authentic. It felt just like one too many people pushed into this book. I think it could have been more interesting if we had seen some new characters that were part of the rebellion but maybe didn't make it to fruition, didn't get to see this pan out. I think that could have been interesting. I think it could have been interesting to see some victors that we didn't see in the main trilogy. I think that could have been more interesting. I would have liked to see other districts. That's something I would like to see in future installments if there are more books to come. But just to be clear and just a reminder, I did like this book. I don't hate it. I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was very good. And normally I would recommend this book to people, but let's be honest, if you like The Hunger Games, you're probably already picking this up. So the crowned victor of March for my best book was The Book of Lost Things by John Connolly. And my worst book, which really wasn't the worst ever, my worst books, thankfully, are pretty passable. It was Circe by Madeline Miller. This just was not my cup of tea. Now let's move right into April's TBR and start with the rollovers for the month. I do have one rollover that I just haven't finished yet. I started really late in March, and that is Hysterical, a Memoir by Elissa Bassist. And I'm listening to this as an audiobook on Spotify. Hysterical falls right into the category of vagina books for me. I have a whole collection of feminist works and books that just revolve around the female experience in general that I refer to as my vagina books, and this fits right in that shelf. And right now I'm about 70% of the way through this book, so I should have it finished in the next few days. I also participate in the Buzzwordathon and Cover Challenge hosted by Kayla at Books and Lala. For the month of April, the buzzword and the cover prompt are the same. That would be animals. And for these prompts, I am reading / already read Bunny by Mona Awad. This is a satiric pink horror novel, and I've already finished this book. I'm filming quite late in the month already. It's already the 10th. I've already finished this book, and it was a wild time. I cannot wait to talk to you about it. The next two categories are going to overlap quite a bit because I tried to consolidate the number of books I was reading to make my monthly goal more attainable. But let's move into my library card TBR. Library Card is my TBR game that I play seasonally, and I recently played the spring TBR round. I'll leave the video in the description as well up in the cards in case you haven't seen it yet. But for my library card game, I do have a few books on my April TBR. The first one would be Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, and this was for a romance genre that was published after 2020. And this is the first book in the Empyrean series. The second book from my library card list would be The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. And this was a reading list pick with a yellow cover. The reading list I pulled this from was my 40 by 40 list. Next up is The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Awad, and this was for a mystery with a 6 or more word title. Now let's go over my next TBR list, which comes from the TBR Trail of the Quest game, hosted by Kim at Expedition Through Pages and Amy from A Star Reads. We have two teams, the Asarai and the Centaurs. I am a proud centaur. And these were the 6 prompts we got during the game. Also, just to keep in mind that the quest challenge runs from the 25th to the 25th, so a few of these books I have already read, but I thought I'd mention them anyway. Our first prompt got us a green book with a light source on the cover, and for this I am reading The Last House on Needless Street by Catriona Awad. Our second prompt was to read a book from our bookish challenge. This was a predetermined challenge that we picked before the game started, and mine is the Buzzwordathon challenge, so I did read Bunny by Mona Awad for this prompt. Our third prompt was a free pick. This is as a result of a challenge win. During a challenge, you compete against the other team to answer a question in the live chat, and our team won this one. And I chose to read The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle by Stuart Turton for this book. And I did read this book in March. It won't be read in April because I've already finished it, but I didn't want to exclude it from listing all the prompts and the books that I picked for these prompts from the quest. And the same thing goes for this book. The next prompt was a highly rated, one of the top 5 rated books on our TBR. And for this, I read Sunrise on the Reaping by Suzanne Collins. And these two I mentioned from my library card game, but let me mention them for this as well. The 5th prompt was a challenge prompt again. We challenged the other team. We lost this time, so our prompt was to read a book with a trope you dislike. And for this, I will be reading The Perks of Being a Wallflower by Chbosky. There is a bury your gaze trope in this book, and I hate that trope. And the 6th and final prompt that we got for the quest was a book featuring sign language, and for this I'll be reading Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros, the first book in the Empyrean series. And that's everything I'll be reading in April. Thank you so much for joining me today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. Are you on the Aserai team? Are you on the Centaurs team? Are we in this together? Are we enemies? What are you reading this spring? I would love to know. And I will catch you all in the next one. Bye.